Today, we will be presenting about professional bodies in engineering. This is the 40132 Engineering and Society. Lecturer's name, Pazuraini binti Ken. Group members, Nurusna binti Salahuddin, Fadina Safiah binti Nur Zaidi, Putri Nuaim binti Roslan, and Izzah Nabila binti Ismail.
Assalamualaikum. I am Nurusna, metric number 1079 as a first presenter. I will explain about determine right and privilege of professional engineer. Okay, at first, privilege of professional engineer. When subject to the provision of this act, no person shall engage in any of principal branch of professional engineering work in Singapore, or draw or prepare any plan, sketch, drawing, design, specification, or other document relating to any of the prescribed branch of professional engineering work in Singapore, unless the person is a registered professional engineer who has enforced a practicing certificate authorizing him to engage in that branch of professional engineering work. B is under the direction of supervision of a registered professional engineer who has enforced a practicing certificate authorizing the professional engineer to engage in the branch of professional engineering work. C is authorized by the board to work in collaboration, but without a right to any independent practice, with a registered professional engineer who has first a practicing certificate authorizing the registered professional engineer to engage in that branch of professional engineering work. 2. The board may grant its authorization to any person under subsection 1.3 subject to such condition, and the board deemed fit to impose subject to provision of this act. No person shall sign and submit to a building authority or to a public authority as defined in section 3. A. Any plan, sketch, drawing, design, specification, or other document relating to any professional engineering work in Singapore. B. Any report or a certificate or other document relating to any professional engineering work in Singapore which is required by any written law to be signed by a professional engineer. C. Unless the person is a registered professional engineer who has enforced practicing certificate authorizing him to engage in such professional engineering work, and any document that is signed in contravention of this subsection shall be invalid. At 495 at 1 for 1995, subject to the provision of this act, no person shall use verbally or otherwise, like A, the word professional engineer or an addition to or abbreviation or derivative of this word in connection with his designation. B, the word engineer or the abbreviation or eng as the title before his name. C, any word or name or designation that will lead to the belief that the person is a registered professional engineer, unless the person is a registered professional engineer. D, where the board has authorized any person under subsection 1C to work in collaboration with a registered professional engineer, the board may allow the person to use such addition to a derivative of the word professional engineer as may be approved by the board. And then we go to the next. 4. Subject to the provision of this act, no person shall advertise or hold himself out or conduct himself in any way or by any means as a person who is authorized to supply professional engineering service in Singapore, unless the person is registered professional engineer who has enforced A practicing certificate, a licensed corporation, a licensed partnership, a licensed limited liability partnership, or partnership consisting wholly or registered professional engineer. At 495 at 1995, provide that nothing in this subsection should apply to prevent a corporation or limited liability partnership that case to have in force a license from carrying on any activity necessary to the winding up of the corporation or limited liability partnership. 5. Subject to the provision of this Act, no person shall supply or offer to supply professional engineering service in Singapore unless the person is at 495 at 1995 a registered professional engineer who has enforced a practicing certificate authorizing him to engage in professional engineering work to which two service relate and is doing on his own account or as a partner is a licensed partnership, licensed limited liability partnership or partnership consisting wholly of registered professional engineer and allied professional and is doing so only by reason of being a partner in a licensed partnership or limited liability partnership. C. A licensed corporation or limited liability partnership. 5A. Notwithstanding subsection 5, a builder may supply or offer to supply a professional engineer or service in Singapore in connection with any building work which he undertakes to carry out the professional engineering service or provide by a person referred to in subsection 5A, 5B, or 5C. 6. Any person who contravenes subsection 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 should be guilty of an offence and should be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 500 and in the case of a second or subsequent offence to fine not exceeding 10,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or 2 months. Nothing in this section shall be construed to permit or authorize any licensed corporation, partnership, or limited liability partnership to supply any professional engineering service which is not licensed to supply. 8. In this section, prescribed branch of professional engineering work means A. Civil engineering, B. Electrical engineering, C. Mechanical engineering, D. Such other branch of engineering as may be prescribed. And next, we go to 9. Employment of unregistered professional engineering prohibit 1. Subject to the provision of this Act, no person shall employ as a professional engineer any person who is not a registered professional engineer. 2. Any person who contravenes subsection 1 shall be guilty of an offence and shall be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 2,000 and in the case of a subsequent offence to a fine not exceeding 5,000. Remuneration for professional engineering service. Subject to the provision of this Act, no person shall be entitled to recover in any court any charge for fee or remuneration for any professional engineering service rendered in Singapore unless the person rendering such service is authorized by this Act to supply to service minor building works. 11. Nothing in this Act shall be construed to prohibit or prevent any person not registered under this Act from carrying out work in respect of the construction of or repair to any building or part thereof in any case in which plans are not required by written law to be submitted to a building authority or to a public authority as defined in section 3.2 relationship with architect. And 12. Nothing in this part shall apply to prevent. Just only that for me.
Employment of unregistered professional engineer prohibits 1. Subject to the provisions of this Act, no person shall employ as a professional engineer any person who is not registered professional engineer. Number 2. Any person who contravenes subsection 1 should be guilty of an offence and should be liable on convictions to a fine not exceeding $2,000. In this case of a second or subsequent offense to a fine not exceeding $5,000. Remuneration for professional engineering service subject to the provisions of this Act. No person should be entitled to recover in any courts any charge, fee, or remunerations for any professional engineering service rendered in Singapore unless the person rendering such service is authorized by this Act to supply to service minor building work. 11. Nothing in this Act shall be construed to prohibit or prevent any person not registered under this Act from carrying out work in respect of the constructions of or repair to any building or part thereof in any case in which plans are not required by any written law to be submitted to a building authority or to a public authority as defined in sections 3.2 relationship with architect. 12. Nothing in this part shall apply to prevent is 12.1. An architect who has enforced a practicing certificate issued under the Architect Act or any person under the direction or supervision of a such an architect. Next, a cooperation partnership or limited liability partnership which is licensed under that to supply architecture service in Singapore from carrying on any activity within the practice of architect which is authorized to carry out under the Act where to do so does not constitute a substantial part of service within the practice of professional engineering. Next, nothing in this Act shall be construed to prohibit or prevent any person not registered under this Act and who is a member of any class of persons specified in the schedule from carrying on any activity which is authorized to carry out under any written law. The Minister may, by notifications in the Gazette, amend the schedule, and every such notification shall be presented to Parliament as soon as possible after publication in the Gazette. 12.1. Next, we talk about the Code of Professional Conduct for Engineering in Malaysia. First, a registered engineer shall at all times hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. Next, a professional engineer shall approve and sign only those engineering documents that he has prepared or prepare under his direct supervision. Next, a professional engineer shall certify satisfactory completion of a piece of work only if he has control over the supervision of the construction or installations of that work, and only if he is satisfied that the construction or installations has fulfilled the requirements of the engineering design and specifications. Next, a registered engineer shall not reveal fact, data, or information without the prior consent of the client or employer except as authorized or required by law, or when withholding of such information is contrary to the safety of the public. Next, 1.4. A registered engineer having knowledge of any violation of this code and local authorities' regulation shall report thereon to appropriate professional bodies, and when relevant also to public authorities and cooperate with the proper authorities in furnishing such information or assistance as may be required. Next, when the professional advice of a professional engineer is overruled and amended contrary to his advice, the professional engineer should, if the amendments made in his opinion give rise to situations that may endanger life or property, notify his employer or client and such other authority as may be appropriate and explain the consequence to be expected as a result of his advice being overruled and amended. Number 2, a registered engineer should undertake assignment only if he is qualified by education and experience in the specific technical field in which he is involved. 2.1. A professional engineer should not affix his signature to any plan or document dealing with subject matters in which he lacks competence, or to any plan or document not prepared under his directions and control. 2.2. Professional engineer should not accept assignment and assume responsibility for coordinations of an entire project. An assignment and stamp is the engineering document for the entire project unless each technical segment of the project is signed and stamped professionally by the qualified engineer who has prepared the specific segment of the project.
A registered engineer shall issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner. 3.1. A registered engineer shall be objective and truthful in professional reports, statements, and testimony. He shall include all relevant and pertinent information in such reports, statement, or testimony, which should bear the date indicating when it was carried. 3.2. A registered engineer may express publicly only technical opinions that are founded upon his competence and knowledge of the facts in the subject matter. 3.3. A registered engineer shall not issue statement, criticism, or argument on technical matter that is inspired or paid for by interested parties unless he has prefaced his comment by explicitly identifying the interested parties on whose behalf he is speaking and by revealing the existence of any interest he may have in the matter. Number 4. A registered engineer shall act for each employer or client as faithful agent or trustee. 4.1. A registered engineer shall disclose all known or potential conflicts of interest that could influence or appear to influence his judgment or the quality of his service. 4.2. A registered engineer shall not accept compensation, financial or otherwise, from more than one party for services on the same project or for services pertaining to the same project unless the circumstances are fully disclosed and agreed to by all interested parties. 4.3. A registered engineer shall not solicit or accept financial or other valuable consideration directly or indirectly from outside agents in connection with the work for which he is responsible. 4.4. A registered engineer as advisor or director of a company or an agency shall not participate in decision with respect to particular services solicited or provided by him or his organization. 4.5. A registered engineer shall not solicit or accept a contract from a body or agency on which a principal or officer of his organization serves as a member of the body or agency unless with knowledge and consent of the body or agency. 4.6. A registered engineer, while acting in his professional capacity, shall disclose in writing to his client of the fact, if he is a director or member of or substantial shareholder in or agent for many contracting or manufacturing company or firm or business, or has any financial interest in such company or firm or business with which he deals on behalf of his client. 4.7. All professional advice shall be given in good faith. Number 5. A registered engineer shall conduct himself honorably, responsibly, ethically, and lawfully, so as to enhance the honor, reputation, and usefulness of the profession. 5.1. A registered engineer shall not falsify his qualifications or permit misrepresentation of his or his associates' qualifications. He shall not misrepresent or exaggerate his responsibility in or for the subject matter of prior assignments, brochures, or other presentation incident to the solicitation of employment shall not misrepresent pertinent facts concerning employers, employees, associations, joint ventures, or past accomplishments. 5.2. A registered engineer shall not offer a gift, solicit, or receive, either directly or indirectly, any contribution to influence the award of a contract which may be reasonably constituted as having the effect of intent to influencing the award of a contract. He shall not offer any gift or other valuable consideration in order to secure work. He shall not pay a commission, percentage, or brokerage fee in order to secure work. 5.3. A registered engineer shall check with due diligence the accuracy of facts and data before he signs or endorses any statement or claim. He shall not sign on such document unless, where necessary, qualifications on errors and inaccuracies have been made. 5.4. A registered engineer shall respond within reasonable time to communication from the board or any other relevant authority on matter pertaining to his professional service. 5.5. A registered engineer shall not maliciously injure or attempt to maliciously injure, whether directly or indirectly, the professional reputation, prospect, or business of another engineer. 5.6. A registered engineer shall not directly or indirectly supplant or attempt to supplant another engineer, intervene or attempt to intervene in or in connection with engineering work of any kind which, to his knowledge, has already been entrusted to another engineer. Take over any work for another engineer acting for the same client unless he has obtained a letter of release from the other engineer or obtained such letter through the client, provided that this requirement may be waived by the board. Second, been formally notified by the client that the services of the engineer have been terminated in accordance with the provisions of any contract entered into between the engineer and the client, provided always that in case of dispute over non-payment or quantum of any outstanding fees, the client shall bequeath the board to the stakeholder under the provision of section 4.1. 5.7. Except with the prior approval of the board, a registered engineer shall not be director or executive of or substantial shareholder in or agent of for many contracting or manufacturing company or firm or business related to building or engineering. If such approval is given, such engineer shall not undertake any contract work where he is engaged as a consulting engineer in such project unless it is in respect of design and build project. 5.8. A registered engineer shall not be medium of payment made of his client's behalf unless he is so requested by his client, nor shall he in connection with work on which he is employed, place contract or others except with the authority of and on behalf of his client. 5.9. A registered engineer shall not offer to make by way of commissions or any other payment for the introduction of his professional employment, except as permitted by the board, advertised in any manner or form in connection with his profession. 5.10. A professional engineer in private practice shall not, without the approval of the board, enter into professional partnership with any person other than a professional engineer in private practice, a registered architect, a registered quantity surveyor, or a licensed.
Lastly is differentiate professional engineering body. Number 1 is the Board of Engineering Malaysia. Is statutory body governed by the Engineer Act 1967 and it was formed in 23 August 1972. The function of BEM is the board is established for the purpose of regulating the professional conduct and practice of registered engineer in order to safeguard the safety and interest of the public. Lastly, is engineer must be registered before he or she can employ or practice as an engineer. Number 2 is Institute of Engineer Malaysia, the main engineering professional society in Malaysia. Learned society registered under the Society Act. The function of IEM is membership is voluntary, but professional standards set by IEM for membership are accepted by BEM as qualification for registration as a professional engineer. For the characteristics, at first, to become corporate membership, one needs only 5 years experience as an engineer. To ensure only engineer with relevant experience would be admitted to become member and could register as a professional engineer. Lastly, its constitution was amended and professional interview was introduced. Number 3 is the Association of Consulting Engineer Malaysia. The ACEM, no-profit organisation comprising of consulting engineer. Its objective is to promote the interest of consulting engineering as a profession. Number 4, other engineering professional society runs in Malaysia, such as Malaysia Society of Agricultural Engineering, Institute of Chemical Engineer Malaysia branch, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineer Malaysia branch. A registered graduate engineer is only eligible to sit for the Professional Assessment Examination (PAE) after he has fulfilled the requirement of Regulation 22 of the Registration of Engineer Regulation 1990. It has obtained 3 years practical experience as prescribed under Regulation 22. Registration of Engineer Regulation 1990. PAE is divided into 2 categories. Number 1 is graduate engineer as prescribed under Section 10, 1A of a Registration of Engineer Act 1967. Number 2 is graduate engineer who hold a professional qualification which the board consider to be equivalent to the PAE conducted by the board of or Route B. PAE, graduate engineer, will consist of professional assessment interview, write to essay, answer one cut of two questions, section A, relate to the candidate's training and experience, section B, code of ethics, candidate will be given 1.5 hour for each written paper. PAE Road B will consist of assessment on code of professional conduct based on the Registration of Engineer Act 1967. Requirement and procedure. Category Graduate Engineer, Category Road B. Number 2, online application. PAE online application, statement of practical experience, at least 1 year practical experience in Malaysia, obtained after graduate engineer registration, printed on company letterhead. Please refer to sample 1 as a reference. If not supervised by a professional engineer, please provide letter of practical experience issued by Human Resource Department as in sample 1 and supporting letter by a professional engineer, same branch, who endorses the working experience of the application as in sample 2. Endorsement must be done by a PE who has been registered with the board not less than 3 years. Question on ethics. Category Graduate Engineer 8 question. Category Road B. Question on Code of Professional Conduct based on REA will be distributed on the day of assessment. We get the reference from the internet. If you want to know more details, you can click the link above. Thank you for listening our professional bodies in engineering. Thank you.